What's good for the goose is good for the gander. All right, what's up, my brothers? I want to cover this topic today. It's near and dear to my heart. I just Googled what that means, and the definition here says, used to say that one person's situation should be treated the same way that another person's situation is treated. Example, if he can go out with his friends at night, then she should be able to as well. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So what that really translates into is what's good for the male is good for the female. And nothing could be further from the truth when it comes to the reality of the world that we operate in as men and women. There are some stark differences and contrast between men and women. I want to talk about that in this video because I often come across this during the course of my ladies' night show when we're talking to the gals and they're expressing the things that they're stuck on with their love life. And I've had this conversation several times, with women around me as well. And it's disappointing when you come to a very clear and concise realization that the sexes are incredibly different. They demonstrate this all the time whenever they take a female soccer team. Like you see this often where they'll take the world leading female football team and they'll put them up against a retired football team of men, and the men destroy them. Or they'll put them up against a high school boys team, and then the high school boys will beat the world-class females in their own division. Men are physically stronger and bigger than women. They have more bone density. Upper body strength is at least 2 times stronger, maybe even 3 times stronger, depending on the build and the culture you're from. But there are visible differences. Anytime you've stood in front of a mirror next to your girl or your wife and you're not wearing much, it's pretty clear men and women are very, very different. I want to talk about a few other ways that they're very, very different that a lot of people don't really contemplate. So the first one is promiscuity. You'll see a lot of women today out there in the sexual marketplace dating and behaving very promiscuous. There's this notion now today that women can be promiscuous without any penalty whatsoever. They can share their body with a whole bunch of guys, not form any kind of a pair bond, and just move from dude to dude to dude. It's incredibly bad for women. We've seen tons of data on this. There's a study that they put out there called the Teachman study. You guys can go look it up if you haven't read it. I've mentioned this before. But essentially, the more men a woman has been with, the higher the probability of that marriage failing. They collected data, I think it was up until about a dozen or maybe 13 or 14 or so, but it was relatively low considering how many guys most women are with today by the time they're even 30. I've heard numbers upwards of 40, 50, even 100 dudes that women have expressed that they've spent time with. And the problem with that is, if you're looking to have children and a family and do the conventional marriage thing, which most people seem to have a strong pull to, especially as they approach 29 or 30. 29 seems to be the average age of marriage now. And even though marriage is less popular than any other time in history, it's still talked about and it still seems to be demanded, especially by women. And you can't blame them. Family law is very friendly towards women. It's very low risk, but high reward, especially if they surrender to their hypergamous nature and they marry up to a more successful guy, which is what women tend to do. They'll marry across and up on the socioeconomic scale, and they'll find a guy that is much more successful. So there's that. For men, though, it doesn't appear to have the same effect on their ability to pair bond in a healthy way to a woman. Even when you talk to women, and I've asked them this question on my show, does male promiscuity matter? Is there a certain notch count at which point you would be disgusted? And they don't really seem to have a clear answer on that. Most of them seem to just sort of look away and say, it doesn't really matter to me as long as there's no diseases. Some will say, well, something like 15 or 20 would be too much for me. But the vast majority of them don't seem to really have a strong objection to it. Again, I'm not saying that it doesn't harm men. I often tell guys, don't run around and sleep with everything that moves. Be discerning in your tastes. Spend time with women that only have genuine burning desire for you. You'll have the best experience that way. But when it comes to promiscuity, the what's good for the goose is good for the gander narrative really doesn't pan out. And it ends incredibly badly for most women and for guys that choose to marry these women and invite them into their life if they've spent time with a lot of dudes. The best women, as indicated in that study, were with, I think it was less than 2 was the number when the chart started to really take off with the chances or the probability of a divorce happening. And it just got worse, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. As you keep going, it just got kind of worse and worse. So again, promiscuity seems to be a real issue for women when it comes to forming a healthy pair bond to one guy. The chances you having a good marriage that doesn't end in divorce goes up dramatically if you choose a woman that has slept with a whole bunch of dudes. The other thing that was interesting as well, too, that came, as a sidebar, was the younger that she was when she lost her virginity, the higher probability that all of these things were to be true. Of course, if you're 13 or 14 and you're promiscuous and running around, you're going to start adding up some notches. For a guy dealing with a woman, you're better off finding a woman that spent 10 years with one guy and one guy only than a woman that spent 10 years completely single, doing what she wanted, where she wanted with her body as she went about life and traveled the world. So there's that. Let's go to the next item on my list. So this is the next significant one. We'll call this number 2. Chasing excellence. Another interesting thing that has become abundantly clear and obvious to me doing the Ladies Night podcast with my co-host Moff is that a lot of women put off a serious commitment in favor of climbing a corporate ladder, acquiring degrees, framing them in mahogany, and being proud of essentially creating a strong, independent woman sort of lifestyle. That's not good for women, because what most of them end up doing and getting to is they either price themselves out of the market by focusing so much on chasing excellence. And right now there's more women in post-secondary education getting degrees, climbing corporate ladders, chasing excellence than there are men. So what ends up happening is, and again, because women are hypergamous, which again means they like to date and marry across and up on the socioeconomic scale, especially in a long term. Short term doesn't matter. You can be a hot dude with a bunch of tattoos, just got out of jail, and she'll spend the night with you. She probably won't marry you though, but she's looking for, on a long term basis, the guy with success, provisioning skills, influence. He's captivating, he's got a network, all that good stuff, obviously. And what ends up happening is these gals, they have a very, very hard time finding a guy, because they put themselves in a position where they look at most guys and they're like, carpenter, plumber, dude that works in a retail outlet, and they actually look down on them. Like, these are actually people that perform useful functions in society, like especially things like electricians and plumbers and guys that are in trades and stuff like that. They often don't get the same level of interest or affection as a guy that might be a professional, like a lawyer or a CEO or an entrepreneur or something like that. And those guys, by the way, that are in a position of success and abundance, and they're doing all of these things, often don't want to choose a disagreeable boss girl. They tend to look more so for a woman that's more agreeable, that's going to be in their frame, that's more feminine, that isn't as masculine. So these gals usually price themselves out of the market, and they struggle to find a guy, and then they wonder, when they get into their 30s and even their late 30s and early 40s, where have all the good guys gone? I've done what I've been told to do, and I've chased excellence and climbed the corporate ladder, and I've got my degrees and my house and my Tesla and all my IKEA furniture, and I've decorated it beautifully, and look at my throw pillows, and they have their liquor cart and stuff like that. And there's no dudes to be found. Or if they find guys, they're guys that aren't particularly interesting to them because they're strong income earners, and they either have to look down towards them as far as what income goes, or they just sort of struggle to make that concession, and they start saying things like, I just won't settle. Just don't settle, girl. So that's a real problem. Now, for guys, the same isn't true, because what's attractive in men is a successful, competent man that can make it rain. He's got a strong network. He's influential. He's accomplished. He's recognized. Basically, men want to be him and women want to be with him. So the same isn't true for women. So this lie that, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, and you should go chase excellence, climb the corporate ladder and all that sort of stuff, it's not really working out too well for women. Again, you got to sort of contemplate these things and weigh them out and ask yourself some questions. Again, I always say several times, ask why. When somebody tells you to do something, or if it's a social narrative that must be done, ask questions like, well, why? Let's talk about the next one, cheating. Cheating is a hot topic. Because there are strong differences and very clear differences, as demonstrated through many studies. EvoPsych, they've gone through these time and time again. They're well documented. Women will betray, and men will cheat. Those might sound like the same thing, but they're actually quite different. So the reasons why men step out are mostly for variety. You can call it variety. You can call it just to get out and get some exercise. they're not, generally speaking, looking to cheat to replace their wife or their girlfriend. Some people get mad at that. They say that's untrue. If he's doing it, then that's wrong, and blah, blah, blah. I'm not saying if it's right or wrong. I'm saying that's the reason why guys do it. Guys have been doing that throughout history. I don't think it's going to change anytime soon in the future. You can point and sputter and call names and say that you're not a real man if you don't, comply with her requests for monogamy or whatever. But the truth of the matter is humans aren't particularly good at monogamy. I have a chapter in my book that talks about that and explains all the details. If you haven't read The Unplugged Alpha, it's pinned below. You should grab a copy. It's also available in Audible, Spanish translation, all that good stuff. So again, when women step out, they betray. So how is that different from cheating, from men looking for variety? Usually when women are getting ready to exit a relationship and they start looking at other options, more viable options. Again, remember, women are hypergamous, so they want better than what they are. And generally speaking, if they're going to replace a guy that doesn't tick off their boxes and give them what they want a guy that's of better value to them than the guy that she's trying to leave. This is often called monkey branching, and you've all been to the zoo and seen a monkey, between the trees or the apparatus or whatever. They grab one and then they kind of swing off to the other, but before they let go of the one that they're grabbing onto, they have a good firm hold before they let go. And that's why they call that monkey branching. It's only women that really do that. There was a survey done, which I cited in my book, The Unplugged Alpha, which talks about women's interesting propensity to have a backup plan. In surveys of women in committed relationships and marriages, half of them admitted to having a backup plan. The other half of them didn't admit to having a backup plan. But the interesting thing about that is, when you admit to having a backup plan, you're basically admitting to being duplicitous. You're admitting to being a piece of shit because you've committed to a guy. I mean, if you've taken marriage vows, right, and richer and poorer and sickness and health and blah 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 blah, you've taken vows to be committed to somebody. But in their hindbrain, in their hypergamous hindbrain, women always seem to have a backup plan. It's often an ex-boyfriend, a guy maybe, a work husband, could even be some gay guy that they've been friends with for 10 or 15 years, and they just had a conversation one day and says, hey, if it doesn't work out, you and I will get together and we'll have a baby or something like that, and they cook up some, funny plan like that. But those do exist. So again, when women are going to step out on the relationship, they're betraying that trust, because they're actually falling in love with the guy, which is very, very different from what guys are doing. Guys can actually go out, have a hookup, have some sex, go home, completely forget about it, and never be concerned about it ever again. They could even be married, go home and kiss their wife, love their children, attend all the family events, the Christmases, the holidays, the summer vacations with everybody, and not bat an eye. Women can't do that, though. They really struggle to act in a promiscuous way like men, and what ends up happening is they end up racking up a bunch of notches. They end up having a poor ability to form a healthy pair bond to a guy, a strong commitment. And then, bad things don't go, things don't go their way in the relationship. And then what ends up happening is they just like, oh, well, you're number 46 on my notches. So what difference does it make if I go to number 47? Stark contrast to a woman that has only been with one guy her entire life before she gets together with you and marries you. Just in the long lineup here for the car wash in this kind of spring day here in Toronto. It's one of those warm days where it gets up to like 7 or 8 degrees and everybody wants to go and get their car washed. So I figured I'd kill some time and make a video or two. So there's that. The other thing with cheating is when they step out on a relationship, men and women get jealous for different reasons, which I find extremely interesting. If a woman steps out and he finds out about it, he's not really that concerned with, did you kiss? Did you go on a date somewhere specific that might be significant or important to us? He's more concerned with, did you fuck her? What did you do when you did it? How many times did you do it? Things like that. He's more concerned with the intimacy part of it. Why? Because men have an innate need to have confirmation of paternity with his woman. Men want a woman to be sexually exclusive with them. They want to own them. They want to own that part of that relationship. Why? Because when women get pregnant, they know the kid is theirs, 100%, without any uncertainty whatsoever. The kid is definitely theirs. But when a guy's gal gets pregnant, he doesn't have 100% assurity that the child is his. Men don't want to raise the seed of another man. They don't want to be cuckolded. They certainly don't want to be duped or lied to. The entire point of course, forming a healthy pair bond and being in a relationship or a marriage and having kids is to raise them together as your own. So guys are most concerned with the sexual aspect of it. And women, on the other hand, have a totally different angle. They are more concerned with, did you love her? The first thing she'll ask is not, did you guys bang? How many times did you bang? Where'd you do it? She's going to be more concerned with, did you love her? Right? Now, if you say that you loved her, you're fucked, guys. It's over, because she's using the lens in which she views stepping out to that relationship. Generally speaking, that's what she's going to be interested in. That and things like, well, did you take her to the restaurant that we go to, right? So, for example, if you get caught at a space or a place that you would normally go to with her or her family, or something that's of significance to your relationship, and you share that with another chick, they lose their ever-loving mind. A buddy of mine was telling me once, he had taken his girlfriend out on a trip to this great place that he loves going to down in Florida. And, they're having a good time. About a day in, an interesting thing happened. She was having a sip of her drink, and they were sort of talking, and she paused, and she went totally cold and frigid on him. And she looked at him and she said, "Oh my God, you've taken other girls here." She was extremely upset. Now, that's because women want to feel special, right? It didn't matter that you banged other girls there. It's that you've taken other girls there. So this is how women and men get jealous. Again, men get jealous because of the assurance of paternity. They want to know that their kid's theirs, which is why they're worried about the sexual act. Whereas women are far more concerned with, well, am I going to lose resources, protection, and provisioning? Because if we fall in love with a woman, they know that we're going to focus on that chick. They know that potentially we might leave them, abandoning them and the children that they've had, and then take our attention and resources and give it over there, which could spell certain doom for a woman 1,000, 2,000 years ago. Today, not so much. Women are all strong and independent. They've got their jobs and careers and everything like that, so it's a much, much different world. But you can see what I'm driving at here. The whole what's good for the goose is good for the gander narrative, it really doesn't stack up. And the last one that I want to cover is around the idea of leading the relationship. We live in a time now today where we see a lot of women that lead the relationship, and it doesn't work. It works so poorly, in fact, that they actually start to resent their boyfriends or their husband if they have to make the date planning and the reservations and pay the bill or even split the bill. They really don't like it. They say that they like it. They say that they want it. They say that they want an equal partnership. That's another flaw, another lie as well too, is that women really don't want an equal partnership. They want to be led. They want to be with a giant. They want to look up to a man. Remember, women are hypergamous. They are hypergamous in nature. They want to look up to a giant. They want to be with a guy that they respect and admire, that other guys want to be and other women want to be with. It is a funny dichotomy because, guys, if other women don't express interest in you, she won't express as much interest in you. It's only when other women express interest in you that she starts to become more interested in you. Isn't that funny how that works? Backwards, upside down world that we're in. The truth of the matter is women are most happy in the frame of a strong masculine man that is able to lead the relationship, take it somewhere, and make good things happen for both of them. When women try that, it really doesn't work out that well. One of the things that I found incredibly interesting, I saw this stat the other day where it talked about how women are much more likely to divorce a man if they do better in their career than a guy does. So if she's getting promotions and raises and bonuses and options and a lot of money starts flowing in, that's when she starts to resent and even feel a degree of disgust for the guy that she's with. It's one of the strongest predictors actually of a divorce. The interesting part of that is it's actually a bad idea for a chick to divorce a guy when she starts making more money, because the way family law works is it takes care of the person that makes less money. Child support, alimony, all of those things tend to flow to the person in the relationship. I almost use a word that I despise there, partner. Try not to use that as often as possible because it's not a very good word to describe relationships. But if the money has to flow anywhere, it flows from the person that makes more money to the person that makes less money. So it's kind of a dumb idea to get to divorce a guy when you start making more money. They often find it backfires on them. Anyway, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Have you seen any other lessons? What has your experience been? Comment below. In the top pinned comment, there's a bunch of useful links to obviously my book, my community, of the things that I'm associated with, including my supplement line. Check it out. You guys have an awesome day. Peace.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play